Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dangerously Optimistic podcast, Lessons in Resisting the Privatization of Public Education. I'm Ayaan Moledina,
And I'm Damaris Allen.
and we are so excited to talk today about where do we go from here. In the last episode, we talked about the state of public education in Texas, and before that, it was the state of public education in Florida, where Damaris is from. And now we're going to kind of bring those together and see how can we figure out a path forward based on all the terrible things that we're seeing. So I don't think we have all the answers. I think that there's a lot of things that are yet to be figured out and that will continue to be figured out over the next few years, but there's definitely some things that we've learned.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think one of the primary things that I think at least we've learned, and you probably would echo this in Texas, is that it's really easy to get stuck in all of the horrible things that are happening, and to get in a loop of just having that conversation about all of the bad things and lose sight of the really amazing things that are happening alongside all of the good things. I mean, all of the bad things. All the good, we lose sight of the good things that are happening with all the bad things, right? And so, I think about for us, we talked about co-location and how they're taking over. They're basically taking over our schools. But all through that, we saw parents get engaged. We saw students get engaged. We saw the press pick up stories about this and run with it. We saw people, the school districts, all of these groups come together to say, this isn't good for our kids. This isn't good for the future of Florida. We need to stand up for this and find a better way forward. And when you're focused on, oh, this is so bad, it's hard to do that. And while we don't typically in Florida get a perfect ending. We often get a better ending, or it would have been worse. I think that to me is really, really hopeful. How about with what's happening with you in Texas?
Yeah, I was just taking some notes here. I mean, it's hard because, especially like with vouchers, this is still pretty new to us. And the funds are not hitting families' accounts until mid to end of June. So we don't even know yet like what that is going to look like. There's many families who are saying they're not even receiving the full amounts that they were promised, especially families with students of disabilities. And we are also hearing from school districts that they can't fully plan their budget for the next year because they don't know what the impact of vouchers will be on them. So there's a lot of unanswered questions here, and when we talk about where do we go from here, it's also like we don't quite know because this is so new. And so there have been talks of like lawsuits to take down the program once and for all. I hope that works out really well because, and I think that would definitely be something that my organization would want to be a part of because we know this is blatantly like against the Texas Constitution that you can't have dollars meant for public schools going to private institutions. That's just not how that works. So, I mean, we've seen this, but at the same time, we have seen people on both sides of the aisle talk about how crazy this is. We have been building more and more bipartisan support, and unfortunately, it took them having to see the real world impacts of this program for them to understand, whereas we knew this was coming all along. And at the same time, it's kind of upsetting because the damage is done and our students are struggling. But now it's about reversing the harm. And how do we do that, especially when our legislature is only in session every other year? It makes it much harder. And so we have the election for the state comptroller coming up. And that is something that a lot of people aren't talking about, but the comptroller is actually the one who administers the voucher program. And so I really want more folks in Texas to understand the importance of that election. And, a lot of people are focused on James Talarico's race, which is really important. I mean, he's been a huge advocate for public education. He's a good friend of mine, and I've known him for years. He's done incredible work. And I'm sure he would agree with me as well that it's important to ensure that we're focusing on other races as well. That includes Gina Hinojosa, who's running for governor. That includes Sarah Eckert, who's running for comptroller. So we need to make sure that, everybody's excited about this year, but that they know how to channel that excitement, right? People are excited, people are mad, but like what do we do about that, right? And it's very easy
Yeah.
to say, okay, just go vote, but then people show up to vote and they're like, I don't know what this is. And so that's a really important education factor. I think I also, when we talk about where do we go from here, I think there's so many different aspects to how the privatization of public education is affecting everyday lives. So in Texas, we could probably do a whole episode on this, and I hope we do, but we have a whole school to prison pipeline
Mm.
that punishes students caught with the vape by sending them to an alternative school, sometimes for 30 to 45 days, basically youth prisons. And that is, again, being using taxpayer dollars, using that. So we see how public funds are not being used in the right way. And I think that there needs to be a conversation about vouchers, but even beyond that, where we're seeing dollars just not spent wisely.
Yeah, it feels like so much of what we do legislatively is reactionary and not proactive, right? In our state, we've had one party in control for about 25 years, yet they consistently complain that public schools are failing. And I would argue that it's probably those who've been running it for the past 25 years that are ensuring it. And our schools aren't failing. Our system is failing our schools, and our system is failing our students. And instead of taking that responsibility, instead of looking at the real issues that are impacting our public schools, they're putting the pressure on the parents and saying, "Hey, parent, it's your job to figure out what to do now." Whereas we have the potential to have this great system if we are honest about the challenges that we face, right? Or we're honest about who we have historically not funded, schools we have historically not funded, or have left behind, or communities we've intentionally broken up.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have a lot of that. We see that around the country. If we were
Hmm.
honest, we would be able to create a vision of a future. And yesterday we went to see a movie, which is very rare. I was actually home for a whole day, and we went to see The Devil Wears Prada 2. Um,
Oh,
and it was fun and funny, and I just enjoyed a little break. But there was this great line that immediately I thought of privatization, right? Like at one point, the character Miranda Priestley says, "You're not a visionary, you're a vendor." And I really think that hits with privatizers. They're not visionaries. They're not envisioning a future where our kids are thriving and learning. They are envisioning a future where they're making money off of our students, right? They are vendors providing a product that we are consuming. And until we can get to the point where we're willing to be visionaries, I don't think we're going to have the school system that we hope for our future, for our kids or our grandkids or ourselves.
yeah. Yeah. Only people like you and I would be able to connect a line from a movie back to public education policy.
We could probably have a game where we can see how long we can go without. But I think that's the beautiful thing is that public education is the unifier, right? It is the thing that we see people coming together across party lines. We all agree that we want a better future for our children. And the challenge is that privatizers have taken advantage of that
Yeah.
and played on our desire to make things better, but they're making a profit and not creating a future. And that's what's really concerning.
Yeah, and I want your opinion on this because it's hard for me. Like we have people in the Texas state legislature who, I disagree with on most things, the people who have led the voucher bills, but I've known them for many years as a person, and they've supported some of the legislation that I've worked on. And I do believe that not all of them, but some of them are fundamentally good people.
Hmm.
And it's hard for me because I know you have people outside billionaires and private school wealthy little monarchs, but that are like evil people. But then you have people in the legislature who some of them I don't think are evil. And it's like how do you find that balance because you're doing something that is so detrimental to our children, our black and brown children's education, but I don't, are they doing what they think is right, even though we know how harmful it is? And when I say that in my local community, just asking people's opinion like I'm asking you right now, people are like, no, they're racist pigs, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, we can't we can't generalize because if we do,
Yeah.
then we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to be able to work with anyone. So what do you think about that?
I I I think there's I think everyone is different. I do think there's a large group of people who don't realize the impact. We see it play out in every state legislature that passes a voucher bill, right? Arizona went first and we went second, and
Yeah.
Florida used the examples of Arizona to say, "Hey, this is what's going to happen here." And
Yeah.
everyone in our legislature said, "Oh, we're going to be the exception, not the rule. We're going to be the ones who do this right." And I think we see that play out. Every state thinks, "Oh, we're going to be exceptional in this. We're going to be the ones that do this right." And most people don't realize that when we are funding these private schools, most of them don't have the same resources public schools have. They're
Right.
often pop-up private schools in a strip mall, or like as our friend likes to say, a closed down Pizza Hut, which that is the reality. And they're
Yeah.
not accredited. They don't have teachers who've been to school, and
Yeah.
they're not equipped to meet students' needs. And so I I while I do think some people are bad actors and are
Yeah.
going into this with the wrong intentions, I think that the vast majority of people are just trying to figure out how to create a better future, and they're being taken advantage of. And until you see that impact, you don't realize it. And if you don't have a kid in school and if you don't go visit public schools, you don't see the impact. And I think that's the real challenge, is that a lot of legislators aren't listening to the people they serve, they're listening to the lobbyists. And that's where it gets
Yeah.
really, really messy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that you're right in saying that they're being taken advantage of because a lot of these legislators, this is not their job. This is like a side hustle for them being a legislator, right? Their day job is being a realtor or it's owning hotels or it's being a veterinarian or it's whatever or it's being an
Mhm.
OB-GYN, like whatever it may be. So this is really truly something that they don't do a lot of. Like I was talking to a legislative staffer and they were like during the interim, like we really don't hear from the senator, we don't hear from the representative. Like they have their own lives. And so when they come to the Capitol every other year, then my thinking is like they they're truly being, for lack of better words, brainwashed by the special interests and by the outside lobbyists because they're being given this data and those lobbyists are so powerful. They swarm the building, they catch you at every corner, and then you have influences like the governor because he's bought out and then he threatens you. So there's all sorts of outside influences. And so I think these people, like you said, are truly being taken advantage of. And again, since this is not their job, they're not going to public schools, they're not visiting, they're not talking to educators. Most of them are not black and brown, so they don't have kids that are gonna really feel the impact of this. Many of them have kids in private schools, right?
Hmm.
And so it it's really one of those things where I just think we need to have more conversations, and instead of going in front of the committees and saying you all are racist jerks, I mean, it's very easy to think that. And hey, I get it. Like I do. Like this is affecting my community as well. But we have to figure out that a way to talk about it, because us saying that is immediately going to have them shut off.
Hmm.
And I don't know the perfect way to get them to listen to us more. I don't think there is a perfect answer, but there has to be something better than what's happening right now. And then I mean, even at the federal level, and I know we have an episode coming up talking about ECA and the federal voucher program, but like, then I talk to members of Congress, and like they literally don't know what the bill says. Like they genuinely do not. And I think part of it is because there's a million different issues coming at them. You have Iran, and you have vouchers, and you have Medicaid, and you have all sort public safety. I mean, you have like all these million different issues. And even if you have a staffer who's your education staffer, that staffer has a bucket list of other issues that they handle. And so a lot of these people are just not equipped to understand the impacts of these policies. And then you have, unfortunately, I believe that the privatizers have a lot more money and have a lot more resources to be able to go brainwash and take advantage of these staffers and these members. And so I think where we need to come in is we need to be more united in figuring out how do we how do we move forward? Because like in Texas, there's a very strong coalition of privatizers. Like it's like they're all in cahoots. Whereas on the
Yeah.
public education side, it's like we're organized, but we've got multiple different groups. We're not a one single group. It's a hard thing to do, but they've mastered it, and we need to figure out how to do the same, I think.
Yeah. And I think the good thing is that one of the advantages we can have is building relationships with our legislators, right?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't require money. That just requires time and willingness to make a couple of phone calls regularly.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we talk about a lot is that relationships aren't built when they're in Tallahassee meeting during session. Relationships are built when you're at home. And if they're not visiting your local public school and you're a public school parent, invite them. Ask them to come. Have them meet with your PTA or your PTO. You can invite them in. That's not a political thing. You're asking them in to talk about, to learn more. Invite them to meet with your student government, right? There are so many opportunities for us to build relationships with them. And when you have a relationship where you have conversations, where you get to know them as a person outside of the office, and this goes for both sides of the aisle, it's easier to have a conversation with them, right? My son went to school with our legislators child, right? So I think this was two legislators ago, but he tutored her daughter in chemistry, and we don't agree on almost anything, but we both want what's best for our kids, right? And so we're able to meet on that common ground. So how do we find that common ground and then ask the difficult questions, right? What happens when we have this $5 billion budget? We have a $5 billion budget item that's vouchers, and in 2027 we have a $6 billion projected deficit. Is Does that mean the vouchers are no longer sustainable? Because that's what's coming in Florida, right? And so what gets cut first in our budgets, right? So we can start having these. Some of my first conversations around vouchers were, I'm concerned we're going to open this up and it's not going to be sustainable, and that's not good for kids either, right? And so we don't talk about those difficult conversations if we don't have a relationship, and those are so important. And lobbyists aren't necessarily going to do that because they're vendors, right? They're often vendors. They're trying to sell what they have, whereas we're just trying to figure it out in a lot of ways.
Was the $5 billion deficit for the state?
So the state in 2 years is projected to have we don't have a deficit right now, but in 2 years we're projected to have a $6 billion, I think it's about a little over $6 billion deficit. But we are spending $5 billion. We're projected to spend $5 billion on vouchers. And when you consider 84% of those students had never stepped foot in public schools, logically that's going to be the first place to cut. But we haven't even recovered from last in the last recession. We have not ever been restored to pre-recession spending in public schools.
See, we have like a every session we have like a 25 to $30 billion surplus. And then we have like a $32 billion rainy day fund.
Yeah.
And someone the other day was telling me, like, when are the legislators going to understand that it's been raining? And I
Mm,
thought that was so true. Like, I hadn't thought of it that way of like, what are we thinking of a rainy day fund? Like, when is that rainy day coming? Like, global apocalypse? Like, like, what is going on? And so I think that my fear is, despite the surplus that we continue to have, if the legislature continues going in this direction of putting more and more voucher money in, then we could very well end up like Florida. And that is
yeah.
my fear.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have had surpluses, but we know that everything's changing, right? And I think as we're looking at where do we go, I think I think it's so important that people aren't overwhelmed by what's happening, right? And I think it's so important that we don't see this terrible future laid out before us and assume that that's where we are, that it's a foregone conclusion. That's it. Our schools are going to be privatized. Our public schools are going to, be the schools of last resort. I don't think that's the truth. I think, and this is probably where a bit of the dangerous optimism comes in, is that I only think the optimism is dangerous if we don't put the work behind it. And I think that's really important is we can't just assume that these institutions that we have come to know to be such an important part of our democracy will stay, that people value them. We have to organize. We have to talk to our neighbors. We have to talk to our friends. We have to talk to people who we don't necessarily agree with and help find a path forward, because if we don't do that, then our optimism is absolutely dangerous. But if we do that, our optimism is realistic. We can work towards a common goal. We can get to a space where we are all benefiting from public education. But if we don't do that, I worry about the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, we've seen so many powerful stories of people sharing their experiences. Austin ISD, which is one of the biggest districts in the state of Texas, is facing, I think the number was like 120, probably more, $1 million deficit this year. And they just had to close 12 schools, 12 elementary schools. And the number of parents that have showed up at the legislature, that have showed up at the board of trustees, I mean, it is really good to see. It's sad that they have to be there, and it's sad that oftentimes they don't get their way. But I'm glad that people understand that this is going to affect their everyday communities. And I know that people care, just like you said, because on the back of my phone, I have a sticker. Oh my gosh, but it says, I love public schools. And everywhere I go, people compliment me, no matter who it is, no matter where they come from, because they know that these are the things that make sure all our kids are on a level playing field to be set up for success. And right now, in a lot of different ways. I mentioned the school to prison pipeline. I mentioned the lack of state funding. We're setting up our kids, our families, and our schools up for failure. And there's a lot that needs to be done. And I do think that with the work we're all doing, you and I see each other very often in person. We talk all the time. I think those are the types of things that keep me optimistic, that show like we're doing it. It's hard, but that just shows how much it's needed.
Yeah. And we have we have seen, especially across the South, this speed to redistrict to keep certain groups in power. And as devastating as I don't agree with it. I think it's terrible. It's I think it is fueled by racism. And I'm very, very concerned with that. But I also think it's shown us when the the power, the possibility for the legislatures to move quickly about things they care about.
Yeah,
And there is no reason that they can't move quickly to change the things that have happened that haven't been good for the people they've served, right? So if things shift and if we use our voices, there's no reason for us to say, "Oh no, we can this can take time, this can take a long time." No, we need to demand that our kids, our future, our democracy is too important to just take time on. These things matter, and we don't get to keep pushing it off until next session, because you have shown when you want to marginalize our voices, when you want to make our voices say what you want them to say, you'll move quickly. And so you should absolutely move as quickly to make, if not faster, to make sure that voices are being heard.
yeah, absolutely. So I think this was a good conversation, made me feel better, and I know we have some good conversations coming up about the election, about the federal state of public education, about and bringing in some guests from some of our partner organizations. So I'm really excited, and I think we're going to continue. We're going to continue to fight because you and I visit schools, we interact with kids, and we know they need us, and we're going to keep doing it. So, thank you everyone for listening to the Dangerously Optimistic podcast. We look forward to seeing you again soon.